It's time. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Into the Liminal Abyss. I am your show host, Chatan Noir, and today I am talking to Mr. Todd Clements, and he is a local Michigan author, but he's talking about subjects that I love to talk about. So without any further ado, I'm going to let Todd give you some info about himself.
How you doing? I'm Todd Clements, and I've been interested in the paranormal since the age of 12. Saw a ghost on Mackinaw Island on a family vacation, and it got me hooked. And I was, like I always said, I was that kid who took apart his toys on Christmas morning just to put them back together to see what made them work. And when it came to ghosts and all the unexplained paranormal, cryptids, UFOs, all that, I wanted to figure out how it worked. And I've been doing it ever since. Wrote my first book, came out in 2006, Haunts of Mackinac. It's been a best-selling book on the island ever since it came out, and that was followed up by a tour because people they wanted more, and I had a lot more than what was in the book. So I started giving the tour, and it became basically my career, and I followed up with a second book, Haunts of Mackinac, the next chapter. Came out in 2016. 2016. Yeah, and that's kind of, I'm involved in all kinds of different paranormal things. Mostly Mackinac Island, that's my baby.
Right.
But I also work with the Metro Paranormal in Bay City with the USS Edson and various other different teams, things like that, with some of their investigations. And I love doing cons. I do a lot of those too. So.
Okay, cool. So now I'm assuming you collect a lot of ghost stories, and everybody probably always has a ghost story to tell you.
We get ghosts every time I talk to people on Mackinac Island, mostly tourists now. It used to be locals, but they've already told me most of their stories, but now tourists come to me. They find me at either our ticket office or at a book signing or something, and they're just like, I got a story to tell you. I'm not crazy, but that's how it always starts. And then they tell me what they saw, and usually they come to me with a Mackinac Island story, and I go, okay, I've heard that one, and then I go into detail and tell them exactly who it is, what's going on, what other people have seen, and they're just like, that's amazing, oh my gosh, I never knew. It's fun to like see their eyes just open with amazement when it comes to, what they're talking about, and you're validating they're not nuts. It does happen.
Right.
And sometimes they tell me stories, their personal stories, homes and things like that, which I can't validate, but I get those a lot too. So.
Now I had. Do you have any stories about I know there's a fort in Mackinac City,
Fort Michilimackinac.
Okay.
That's Mackinac City. It has stories, but there's not as many. That's actually a rebuilt fort. It's not the original.
Okay.
The original burnt down when it was attacked by Native Americans years and years and years and years, hundreds of years ago, 100 and some odd years ago. Fort Mackinac is on Mackinac Island. That was a British Revolutionary War fort. British built it for the Revolutionary War to control the trade in the Great Lakes and keep the Americans under control. Unfortunately, it never was finished by the British because the war ended and the British turned it over to the United States. And the United States finished most of that fort only to have the War of 1812 come. And during the War of 1812, the British snuck onto the island, went to the highest point of the island, which is Fort Holmes. They called it Fort George. We now call it Fort Holmes. But they aimed one cannon. They aimed a cannon down towards the fort, fired one shot, and said, surrender or we're going to destroy you, because they had the high ground and they were prepared. They had an entire army. They had Native Americans they hired to help them as like mercenaries, and the fort had 60 men. The commander of the fort said, we have to surrender because there's no way we can defend the fort from where they are, and there's no way we can protect the people in the town from the attack. We can't get them into the fort and protect them. So the fort is yours, and the British took the fort back. And then in 1814, the war ended, they signed the treaty again, and we got the fort back. We've had it ever since. So.
Well, I would hope so. We have American.
Yep. Fort was active till 1898. I think 1898, 1892. Sometimes I get fuzzy on dates because I got a million. I have a million dates in my head. But it was active fort up until then, and the Civil War, it was used to house Confederate prisoners. There weren't that many. There was only a handful. Mostly were sympathizers for the Confederacy that were living in the North. They would arrest them and keep them in the fort to make sure they weren't going to do something to the North, sabotage or something like that, or spies. And the fort has been a hot spot for activity for a long time when it comes to the paranormal. We've investigated a few times. It's really hard to get in there to investigate. It's not just can we investigate? No, you got to go through the state of Michigan.
Right.
You have to get permission. You have to get the state parks to sign on. You have to get the local state park director to sign on. Everybody has to say yes, 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 yes. We've only done it a couple times, but the first time I'll never forget because we literally had just set up in one of the buildings' officers' quarters. We set up, and within 10 minutes, we had someone's hair being pulled, and you can actually see the hair rising up in the air, and we got EVPs of little children's voices and laughing.
Oh, wow.
And what haunts that officers' quarters is two little kids.
Okay.
Who died while their dad was an officer, and while he was serving, both of them died while they were at the fort. Their mother, which is kind of ironic, haunts the cemetery at their graves.
Oh.
So
basically two ships passing in the night.
Yeah. They're both ghost stories. I think she's residual. I think they might be active.
Okay. That's
my thoughts, because she's always seen crying over graves dressed in black.
Oh, okay.
It's the only thing anybody ever sees.
Yeah.
And if they come towards her, she vanishes. It's like a mirage.
Okay.
She vanishes if you get too close to her.
Okay. Now, have you heard, because I know they do it as part of their, they do a haunt, like 2 Saturdays in a row, they do a haunted.
Fort Fright?
Yeah.
Not a part of it. It's cool. It's not ghost stories. It's more like a haunted house.
But I heard they actually have a werewolf legend up there.
I say it's the dog man, but it's
I'm a dog man investigator,
legend,
but some people call it werewolf, some people call it dog man.
It's kind of similar but different.
Yeah.
They both are. They're both canines.
They're both upright bipedal canines that can hunt you.
Yep. Yeah, it's a cool thing, and a lot of people. It's very popular at the fort in Mackinaw City. So.
Now, what are some of your favorite ghost stories?
I have a lot.
Okay.
Everybody, when they ask me that question, I'm just like, which one? I have so many. There's some that are really good. There's some that just make you go, wow. One that just popped in my head, Fort George. It's Fort Holmes now. We did an investigation up there during the day, and you don't have to ghost hunt at night. Common misconception. We were doing a daytime investigation at the fort, and we were sitting in a circle trying to see if we could get EVPs. A bunch of us were asking questions and seeing if we got anything. Nothing. We got nothing. And then there was a guy with us who was Native American, and he had a satchel around his neck, and he takes it off, puts it by the recorder, and says, "We're here, we're friendly. This is an offering of friendship and peace. We are not here to harm you. We just want to see if you're here." We got an answer, and it was Native American tongue. We didn't know what it said.
Oh, wow.
He knew what it said, and he told us, but they said Miquach. And we got an EVP of it. It says Miquach. And he said, I think it was Ojibwa. He said it means thank you. And it's a gratitude. It's a symbol of gratitude and thanks. And we're just like, I was like, that's the first time I ever got a foreign language as an EVP.
Wow.
And it was translatable by the guy. If that guy wasn't there, we would have no idea what it was. We would have thought, what is it? It's a ghost? It's not making sense. It can't be. It's not English. Not a ghost don't all speak English.
Right.
So, but that one was really cool because it was actually responding to something we did.
Wow.
To make it realize we weren't a threat. That was a cool one. Being touched on the face, that was a really cool one. That was in the theater at Mission Point. I had a young child basically put his hand on my face and just stroke down to the base of my neck. And that one was amazing, scary, but not scary.
Right.
It was kind of like a shock, but I didn't feel threatened about
Right.
it. It was kind of peaceful. You could tell it wasn't trying to hurt me. It was just saying, I'm here. And it was a little boy that we had contact with several times on investigations. He was always lonely. He was always scared. Didn't know where his mom was. It was kind of a lost child's soul. And I told him he could follow me. So he followed me in the theater and he stroked my face, and he followed me for a while. Actually, I saw him twice as an apparition. It was 2 times within 10 minutes, and he was peeking around a corner at me back home downstate.
Oh.
So he followed me. It followed me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you can't be here. I told him your mom's passed away. And
Yeah.
I'm assuming she had, because most of the spirits we deal with up there are over 100 years old.
Right.
And he needed to find her. She's somewhere, it feels like home. She's waiting for you. And we never heard from her ever again on any investigation. So it's the one time I can say I was kind of a ghost whisperer. I think if I did, great. If not, I don't know what I did. But he didn't come back, and he's not in the house at my house anymore. So.
Yeah, the last thing you want is like a spirit, like,
Yep.
setting up territory
Never
in your
invite
home.
a spirit to follow you.
Right.
Never, and I tell people that all the time. Never ask
It will
them
not
to follow
end
you,
well.
because they might actually just follow you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Once they're attached, they they're like
he wasn't threatened.
They're like
though,
freckles
so
on a redhead. You ain't getting them back up.
It's nice
for a
because
while.
at least he wasn't a threat.
Right.
He was peaceful. He was kind. So, and he listens. So, twice. Follow me and go find your mom.
Yeah.
So.
Now, besides being touched, what has been some of your best evidence that you have witnessed?
I saw the little boy. I saw Mission Point's most famous ghost, Harvey. I saw him when I was a kid, when I was 12. I saw him on the bluff. Saw him a second time in the theater. I'm standing in the back of the theater watching someone do a presentation, and I noticed there's someone standing directly next to me. When I look straight at them, they disappeared, but when I start to move my head away, they reappear. And it was a guy shifting his weight. He had a horizontal striped t-shirt on, short hair. I mean, I could describe who he was, what he looked like. And every time I look at him, he'd vanish. And I think it was Harvey who was the famous ghost.
Uh-huh.
But that was another one I saw. I've seen 2 shadows. One was on the USS Edson in Bay City. It's a naval destroyer we investigate. And saw a shadow there. Saw a shadow in Mission Point's soundstage as well. That was actually 2. And they kept moving around at the other end of the room, and then they eventually just stopped. So I've had my fair share of weird experiences.
Now, what about the waters around Mackinaw Island? Are there ghost ships that have been sighted?
There's 2 ships that are reported. One is the most famous ship, basically in the Great Lakes, probably other than the Edmund Fitzgerald, is the Griffin, which was the first massed ship to go through the Great Lakes. And the story
treasure
of the
hunters
Griffin,
are still looking
they're
for
still
its
looking.
wreck.
They keep saying they found it, but no one's ever come forward to say we actually found it. But it was heading from, I believe it was Wisconsin. It was loaded up with furs, and they were taking it back to, I believe, Buffalo, New York. They were bringing it back somewhere. Can't remember exactly off the top of my head. But it was loaded down with furs, had a crew of like 3 people. It was a skeleton crew, not many people on board. Took off, and it disappeared. Never was seen again. The only thing that has actually been documented as being found were the pelts and the furs that were on it, washed up on the shore of Mackinaw Island, Mackinaw City, St. Ignace, Round Island, and all in that Straits area. There was beaver pelts and rabbit pelts.
Wow.
Fur was washing up on all the shorelines, so they knew it had to be somewhere in that general area, or the current moved it into that general area. and that's all they knew of it. And occasionally on foggy mornings, really early, people say they see tall-masted ship approaching from the west, and it vanishes in the fog before it ever gets too close. And some people say it must be the Griffin. So that's the story of the Griffin's ghost ship. The other one is the Gilcher.
Okay.
That was the first steel-hauled ship in the Great Lakes, and they claimed it was unsinkable. Sounds familiar?
Never make that claim on the Great Lakes.
Sounds like another ship called Titanic.
Yes.
The unsinkable ship, right?
Yep.
Well, the Gilcher was it was a steam ship, steel-hauled, and it went down in the Straits area. Horrible storm, fatalities on it, and that ship is occasionally seen out in the Straits as well. And it had a sister ship, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the sister ship. Almost a year to the day, the unsinkable sister ship went down in the Great Lakes. So they both sank, and they were the first version of like steel-hauled freighters. They look kind of loosely like a freighter today, but much smaller.
Right.
And the third thing, it's not a ship, it's actually a canoe.
Okay.
The interesting about this story is most people think canoe, they think of what you find at sporting goods today.
Right.
Canoes back then weren't that small.
No.
Canoes back then could be 30, 40, 50 feet. They were enormous because they were used to haul trade, fur or goods or whatever they needed. They used it because it was a lot easier to construct one of those canoes than a full ship. So people would use that. It was kind of just like a UPS truck instead of a freight truck.
Right.
Or a train. And they would use those, and one of the people who was doing it supposedly had it loaded up with furs. It's kind of a legend, but the legend has two stories to it. The first story starts in the Straits of Mackinac. Loaded up with fur. He was an explorer. They called him Sebastian. He was going to France to his betrothed, the woman he was going to marry. He had the furs to pay for them to settle, have a house, have money, get married, everything. And he went missing, disappeared, was never seen again. Now, the funny thing is, there's a ghost story in Detroit, which at the time would have been New France.
Yes.
That was what Detroit, because Detroit means the Straits.
Yes.
It's French. The French founded Detroit. So we're pretty sure that.
And they brought the name Rouge with them.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a story in Detroit of a ghost story of a man coming to his betrothed on a canoe from Lake St. Clair, which is near Detroit, to the Detroit River, and he disappears before he hits the Detroit River. They don't have a name for him though.
Right.
But I'm like, those two stories are very similar. Could those two stories be the same story? I think they are.
Yeah.
And people say they see him on foggy days. They see a man in a really, really large canoe, fully loaded with a mound on it, which is probably fur.
Yeah.
So that's the last ghost ship on the lakes. So that, at least in the Straits.
Yeah. The Straits of Mackinac, which also has a reported lake monster.
Yeah. We haven't named the thing. We probably should.
Call it Mackie.
It's not Nessie.
Right.
It's not a dinosaur type thing. It is an eel type sea creature.
What they would call a sea serpent.
Sea serpent,
classification.
Yep. It's a sea serpent. There's some reports. There's actually a sheriff's report out of Sheboygan, where the sheriff deputy did see the things. He said he saw two of them, and they were about, he said, roughly a mile off the shore. He actually was so amazed and, oh my gosh, what is that? He actually went and got a boat to go out and try and find him. Never found him, but he said they were moving up and down through the water, and he'd seen every kind of wave you could imagine. He said this was not waves, this was a physical thing. You could see it popping up and down and arcing and swimming through the water, and there were two of them, and they kept going back and forth to each other. So the serpent has been seen a few times in the Straits, not a lot. That was the most well-known documented, of course. And then one time, it was kind of funny. I think it was in the 60s. Someone brought an inflatable giant sea serpent floating toy, lake toy. It's 30 or 40 feet long, and I guess the thing broke its mooring wherever it was, and just started floating in towards the harbor and everybody saw it, and it was like, oh my gosh, what is that? And they kind of knew what it was, but the thing popped, and I guess eventually it wound up somewhere out by British Landing. But it was funny because the news story was like, local chefs are planning on preparing a new dining experience tonight on sea serpent. So and they made a big joke out of it, but it was just an inflatable toy, but they made fun with it. But then years later, there was a sighting in the 70s of
Right.
sea serpents in the Straits, and there's other ones in the Great Lakes. There's one in I think it's Lake Charlevoix has theirs.
Yeah,
Superior
I wrote a
has
book
one.
on lake monsters and odd creatures
Yep.
of the Great Lakes. So yeah, I just I
it's
always love
deep
getting
enough.
local experts, like, you know.
It's
So what have you heard?
Because the Straits of Mackinac are 200 feet deep at
Yes.
the bottom. I mean, it's so deep, scuba divers can't even get to the bottom without special equipment.
Right.
And it's littered with shipwrecks. The biggest shipwreck is a 600-foot freighter, the Cedarville. Went down in, they said, 7 minutes. The ship sank. 7 guys lost their lives on that one. And you can scuba dive on it. It's still sitting right there. There's a buoy for scuba divers so they can find it. I think it's at 30 feet is the one part of it, and the deepest part's like 70 or 80 feet deep. It's kind of on a ridge. Other interesting thing about the Straits is it used to be a river valley.
Yes.
And there was a waterfall that was
Oh my
bigger
gosh,
than Niagara Falls.
I was actually talking earlier to somebody about that. Did you know that there's actually, you know, a waterfall
Yep.
down there?
And they actually did bring out submarines. I think it's like, I don't remember who it was. It's a state research thing. They brought it out there and they actually found it, and it's legit and it's there. They found caves underwater. Supposedly they found pottery in some of these caves. So you're just like, this area once was a thriving valley.
Yeah.
With a river at the bottom and a waterfall before it was a lake. And I'm assuming this was before the Ice Age, because the water that's there now is still from when the glaciers melted. So this over 10,000 years ago, there were people in the Mackinac region of some form. So it makes you think, wow, that's a long time, 10,000 years.
Yeah.
Ancient Egypt? No, before them. It was before Egypt. So.
Yeah. Yeah, which is that is so cool. I love it when people like confirm things that I've heard. And
when the lake was higher, before the Great Lakes were much higher. It was one giant lake, and there were islands which are now high points in the UP. And I was actually talking to someone this weekend about Newberry tablets and statues, and we were talking about that, and he goes, these are not Native American, and they were someone
Minoan.
translated it Minoan. There's a Minoan language on the tablet, and that's not here.
Right.
Well, how does it here? There's so many weird mysteries in this world. I love it. We'll never know.
And then when you overlay that knowledge with our acceptance of what myth and legends are, it's like, well, what if the Greek Minoan legends and stuff like that, these creatures that they saw, we don't know how far that they were traveling in their boats. What if they did really see something that fit this description, and it's no longer in
so many things. I mean, I specialize in the ghost stories.
Yes.
But I'm also interested in other things like sea serpents, fairies, which aren't the fairies that you're thinking like Tinkerbell. They're like balls of light.
Yeah.
I'd say the thing I know the least about, to be honest, is probably the UFO thing, because there's one major sighting in the Mackinac region, and that was in, I think it was the 70s.
When the Mustangs went missing.
No. This
the
was
fighter
up in
planes?
Mackinac. This was actually nothing went missing, but there was a UFO sighting over the Mackinac Bridge.
Oh, okay.
And it was to the point where the sighting was so, oh my gosh, that they actually scrambled fighter jets from the UP, from the Air Force Base, to intercept, but it was gone before they got there.
Now, I had heard a story of they scrambled some Mustangs, and one of the Mustangs went missing. They were never able to recover it, and they couldn't confirm whether it crashed or what happened to it.
I've heard that story too. I don't know if that's the bridge one though.
Okay.
That might be a different one.
It's probably a different one, but yeah, I did hear about
because I don't think
Mustang.
that the one from the bridge they never made.
Okay.
I don't even think they got off the ground.
Now, have you seen? There's a map that they sell in the gift shops all along Superior that has like all the shipwrecks, but there's also UFO, sightings and
Yeah, and I've talked to a few people on the island who say they see these weird lights flying off of Round Island, going straight up to the sky. I've never been. This is horrible to say. I've never been to Round Island, but there's a lot of people on the island who've never been to Round Island. It's literally a half a mile, maybe max. I don't know, just across the straits. But the currents are really hard, and it's dangerous to go over there unless you were somebody who knows how to go against
navigate
the
the straits.
and get through the straits. But I do want to eventually get over there and see that, because there's stories from there of ghost lights and the lights flying up in the sky. And there's a story of, and I don't know if it's true. I know the story's true, but I don't know if what's still the archive, like the relics are still over there. But at one time, a ship came to Mackinaw Island and typhoid fever broke out.
Oh.
And the island said you can't bring the ship to the island because you're going to infect everybody who's here. So they sent him to Round Island, said, you guys stay there until you guys get well. And they never came back.
Oh, wow.
Now, the story goes that I've heard, and I would like to find it, and I don't know where it would be, but there's supposedly a rock ring, a fire ring with rocks, and it was found with skeletons all around it.
Oh, wow, that would be
Which could be
creepy,
the survivors
but
of the typhoid.
Really, yeah.
Well, not survivors, the ones who had typhoid died sitting around a fire.
Trying to keep warm.
Trying to stay warm and survive, and they all died of typhoid. That could be something, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, if you've never
I can't
been,
say it's true.
If you've never been to Michigan or the UP or Mackinac Island, it almost has its own ecosystem because it's basically at the mercy of the lakes. The wind, the rain, all that, and
the weather's amazing.
And it's way cooler there than it is mainland.
Right now, it's
hyperthermia.
90-some degrees here.
Yes,
it's 70 degrees right there.
Yeah.
And the lake is cold, so it's gonna. I don't know if we'll hit 80 this year with the lake staying. If the lake doesn't warm up, it won't warm up there. You go right across, stay on mainland, Mackinaw City, St. Ignace, it'll be 80, 85, and over there it'll be 68.
Right.
Because it's just surrounded by water and it stays cold. Not cold, but cool.
Yeah.
That's why it was a popular tourist destination.
Yes.
Because
during the
back
summertime,
in the day before you had air conditioning.
Yep. You went up there and
you went to Mackinac Island for
and
the months of July and August.
Yes.
You went up there. You didn't go up there for a weekend. You didn't go up there for a week. You went up there for months at a time.
Yeah.
And you would stay there because it was naturally cold. It was cooler. So that's how it really became a tourist destination. Cooler temperatures, and they put a big hotel there. Calls it Grand Hotel.
Yeah. So now, with all you do with the Mackinac Island, is there another book coming out? Are you looking to expand your tours?
Right now.
What's on the horizon for you?
Well, right now, the second book came out a little bit over a year ago. I've got a couple stories just sketched, little notes. I do want to do a third book. I think it'll be the final chapter. I love Mackinac Island ghost stories, but you can only keep going so long, and you've got them all. I mean, there's more stories. You can always update stories, but the haunted locations are the haunted locations.
Yeah.
You know which ghosts are haunting it, and you can only do so much. The legends, there's a lot of legends on the island. Those are in both books. I got a couple more legends I'm going to throw into the third book that I haven't done yet. And then it's going to be, I'm going to probably make my hardcover.
Yeah.
Out of all three books, it'll be like a 450-page book on Mackinac ghost stories. Who would have thought you could do 450 pages on ghost stories from Mackinac Island? But it will pretty much, the first two books combined are almost 300 pages. So actually, they're about 300 pages. So if I do another book, another 150-page book, it's 450 pages. And I'll do like a limited run hardcover of all the books and bonus material type of thing.
Right.
But that's
down the line.
Way down the horizon. Yeah. Right now, I'm not even thinking about it. Just if I hear a story, I write it down.
Right.
So.
Well, cool. Well, I want to thank you for talking to me this afternoon, and
no problem.
I always love talking to local, people who have knowledge and getting their background and their stories, and it's always awesome to do. So thanks you.
Thanks for having me up.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Take care. Sorry, we're